But then in terms of wide receiver, there's literally no reason to draft a guy early on. Like, I would love to have a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp, but it's very likely that one of those guys is in a pretty similar tier to a guy that gets drafted in like the 7th round. Look at every single season. There's always quarterbacks, wide receivers that emerge, such as Jamar Chase and Deebo Samuel last year, that weren't getting drafted nearly as early, and then they end up finishing top 5 at the position. Whereas running back, you kind of know who the top dogs are year in and year out, outside of injury, I would say. So I'm all on board for drafting running back early. In terms of wide receiver, I think that we all probably – I feel like we have pretty similar strategies when it comes to drafting, but what's your guys' kind of ideas for wide out? I brought up that I would like to draft guys later on. I'll bring up a bunch of those names in a little bit, but Isaac, who are you targeting in your fantasy drafts this year?
I mean, like I said, if I'm top 5, I'm taking Justin Jefferson. I'm really all in on Justin Jefferson, man. Like, you're getting a new coach that comes from the Rams, who made Cooper Kupp the wide receiver 1, one of the most historical fantasy seasons from a wide receiver ever. And he's going to Minnesota with a guy that's skill-wise, talent-wise, better than Cooper Kupp. This guy's put up 2 back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. I feel like I don't really got to say more. He's proven that that's sort of his floor. 2 1,400-yard seasons in a row. So you're getting almost 100 yards every game out of him. The touchdowns are going to go up. The targets are going to stay the same as usual. Adam Thielen's only aging, and Adam Thielen's going to catch a lot of touchdowns. That's what he normally does. But they're going to start moving away from him soon. I'm really all in on Justin Jefferson. Another receiver I really like, Mike Evans. Really like Mike Evans. Remember, Chris Godwin's coming off a pretty major injury. Who's the guy? Russell Gage is the second wide receiver, so it's like nothing to be scared, nothing to really worry about. Uncle Lenny. I'm not big on Uncle Lenny. I won't lie. I think that was kind of a fluke. But yeah, I'm not a big Uncle Lenny guy. So and especially because I know that O-line in Tampa Bay is starting to get a little injured, so it's starting to get a little worrisome. So I think a lot of targets going to go Mike Evans' way. Granted, he's been consistent year in, year out. So Mike Evans, of course, is very, very safe. Jerry Jeudy's another guy I'm pretty big on. Jerry Jeudy is coming into the league with really coming into his 3rd year with his first actual quarterback. And I think a lot of targets are going to go his way. I think him and Courtland Sutton are going to have very similar seasons. I think Courtland Sutton's going really high. I think he's going too high in redraft leagues in terms of just where you're getting him, like 3rd, 4th round. I think he's going too high. If I'm in one of those leagues, I'm taking Jerry Jeudy in the later rounds rather than Courtland Sutton in those early rounds. I think the biggest difference is going to be that Courtland Sutton's going to catch a lot more touchdowns just because he does get used a lot in the red zone. And but I think Judy's going to be the yards, the short yardage guy, the yards after the catch kind of guy like that. But I want to go back to running back real quick, just because I forgot to mention DeAndre Swift. A lot of people will seem out on DeAndre Swift because he's on the Lions. He's produced very good on the Lions the past 2 years, is now running behind what everyone's saying is a top 5 offensive line. They got Jameson Williams. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got weapons. They got DJ Chark. They got weapons to help take away the focus from DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is, outside of the top 5 guys or so, probably has the most realistic chance at like a top 3, top 5 finish for sure. So I'm all in on DeAndre Swift, but there's a lot of wide receivers to be all in on, man. I mean, Stephon Diggs, you're going to get your guaranteed 160 plus targets. But I'll look for some sleeper wide receivers right now because I can't remember off the top of my head.
So I like Pittman a lot, just because, better quarterback play than last year, and he still had a relatively really good season last year. I think he's going to get a few more touchdowns, stay around, maybe 1,100 yards, maybe get 8 touchdowns on the year. Devontae Smith, he has A.J. Brown to take a lot of pressure away from him. However, with that, it's also probably going to come some less targets, but both of them are both home run hitters. I feel like Devontae Smith is a little bit better of a route runner. He's going to be, less injury prone than A.J. Brown has been the last few years. And then one guy that I'm very high on is outside of Stephon Diggs is Gabriel Davis. He slots in to be the immediate number 2. They don't have Cole Beasley anymore. They don't have their number 3 option that was there. I'm forgetting his name right now. So he instantly slots into the number 2. There's going to be targets to take in that area. Gabe Davis is going to fill that in. He also sort of broke out towards the playoffs. We saw the 4 touchdown game, 200 yards. I don't think that's a fluke. A lot of reports have said that his route running has looked better than it ever has been. So I'm going all in on Gabe Davis. So that's one of the guys in there. But he mentioned it, Amon-Ra St. Brown is out there. I don't know how I feel about Elijah Moore. I truly like him. I kind of rode him through the playoffs last year, so I have a soft spot for him, but I do think he's going to break out again this year. Players I would avoid, Kenny Golladay, 100%. I used to be one of the biggest Kenny Golladay truthers, but I don't know what happened last year. I'd still be wary of Allen Robinson. He's in a much better situation now, but what we did see last year on the Braves, or not on the Braves, the Bears was quite concerning. You can also go after guys like Deontay Johnson. I don't know how George Pickens is going to do. He's the 3rd option in that offense. Number 1 is obviously Deontay. He is a massive target machine. I like Chris Godwin, but I wouldn't take him too high. I still think he's going to have a really good season. He was one of the main targets in Tampa Bay. I know they have Julio. I know they have Russell Gage now, but he's still going to do his thing in the middle of the field.
Sorry, there's a siren going by right as I was about to talk. But no, I like a lot of guys that you guys are saying. I'm also a big fan of Mike Evans. I think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans can both exist in that offense, though I do kind of wonder what it's going to look like with Julio Jones in the mix. The big question, of course, for Julio Jones is he going to be healthy? Because the last season he was healthy was same year that Michael Thomas was healthy, and Julio was great. Difference with those two guys is that Julio's quite a bit older. Julio's had quite a bit more injury history, so I think that's why you do end up seeing Michael Thomas go early, and I do think it's fair, even though Julio Jones is probably my favorite wide receiver I've ever watched in my life. So I'm big time Julio truther, and I still think like it could be it for Julio. It could be. But no, I think that a lot of the guys that you guys are bringing up are really interesting. I think that, you're looking at that Bills offense, all those targets lost from Cole Beasley. They did add OJ Howard, but in terms of who's there to kind of take over, I think Gabe Davis is definitely the guy. So I think that he's a guy that could be he's a big like kind of boomer bust player. Stephon Diggs, that he's going to take a lot of targets. But that whole offense is going to be really cool how it plays out. James Cook is there now, so they have a better pass catching back. But I mean, like you could see that offense really playing out a bunch of different ways. But I mentioned it before. Don't draft wide receiver early. Why would you draft A.J. Brown or T. Higgins when you can wait like 4 or 5 rounds and go and snag Chris Olave, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Adam Thielen, Gabe Davis, like Robert Woods, who let's look at T. Higgins. T. Higgins is a wide receiver 2 in an offense where the best or one of the best wide receivers exists. Like we all saw Jamar Chase take over the league last year. Tyler Boyd is still there. Joe Mixon's still there. Like there are so many mouths to feed. And it seems like a lot of people are kind of knocking Jamar Chase for that when it's like, dude, the guy to knock is probably T. Higgins. Like Jamar Chase might take up more of the offense this season. So I think that there's a lot of guys that are going like that mid-tier, like DJ Moore. We've seen how bad that offense has been. I know you like him, Chase, but Michael Pittman, I'm a little scared of Michael Pittman, and I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I think you're definitely like right there with your evaluation. But I do think it's a big difference going just for his value, not for the team winning, for going from Carson Wentz to Matty Ice, because we saw what happened with Julio Jones in Atlanta when Julio was still balling out. Matt Ryan couldn't give him the deep ball, and that was the thing. That's Michael Pittman's game. So that's I do have a little bit concerned there, and it's not like I don't like the guys, but I just think that you can get guys way later in the draft where it's just like, oh, this guy might be a stud, and you can just snag a bunch of those guys, end up getting a lot of value. Michael Thomas is ranked 58th. 58th, man, and he's not going to miss that long, and he's going to come back, and he's going to be in an offense where he's very clearly the number 2. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to have a similar target like share when he's on the field to a guy like T. Higgins. So I just think that there's a lot of value to be had later in the board. You guys also talked about the Denver Broncos offense, which I think is so interesting, and I think it's so hard to project. And for that reason, I'm not going to take Cortland Sutton, and I'm not going to take any of their guys. until way late in the draft and KJ Hamler is available. Because KJ Hamler just might be a guy that turns into a 2 and plays that Tyler Lockett role for Russell Wilson in that offense. Do I think he's going to do it? Not necessarily, but I think there's a chance he could. And I think the other guys are going to just be fighting for targets. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, like we don't know who's going to be the one there, and they're both getting drafted like they're going to be close to the one. So I'm a little bit concerned there. I also think they're going to run the football a ton. I'm a big Javonte Williams guy, so that's another part of that offense. So I just think for wide receiver, like there's guys you can get early. There's the CeeDee Lambs, the Mike Evans, the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. If there's a guy you just don't like, a Devontae Adams, right? Those superstars. But if you don't get those superstars, I don't think there's a reason to draft any of those mid-tier guys, because I think if you're looking at talent-wise, you're going to find these guys later on in the draft are pretty similarly talented to the guys early on the draft, but maybe they're just not expected to be as large of a role in the offense. And honestly, it's hard to tell right now early on in the season what those roles are going to be. And I mentioned guys like Deebo Samuel that take that huge jump, right? That happens every season where like some of these guys that are later on in the draft, you can just see them. Oh, look, this guy exploded. And I also think another big reason why I'm not big on drafting wide receiver early is because if like the difference of like a running back 1 to a running back 2 and a wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2 is way different. Like you're getting way more points out of your running back. So that's why I think you got to capitalize on running back early. But those are some of the guys I like. I think there's so many good wide receivers in the league too. So that also makes it really hard. Like I think when we were younger, I think it was easier to tell who are those great wide receivers in the league. Now it feels like there's like 30, 40 wide receivers that are as talented as like some of the guys that were in the top 10 when we were younger kids. I don't know. That's just me maybe, but I really do feel like that.